Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Tyson Fury's upcoming opponent, Sweden's Otto Wallin, is questioning what the fight with Deontay Wilder has taken from Tyson Fury. Wallin and Fury will meet on September 14th in Las Vegas in what shapes as the second fight of Fury's co-promotional deal with ESPN and Top Rank. He is also co-promoted by Frank Warren. Now, Wallin bringing up Fury's chin as a question, that's actually quite an interesting topic because I think many of us have wondered, well, is there any chance that Fury is suffering any consequence as a result of that fight with Wilder, especially from the second knockdown? Overall, it wasn't a war by any stretch of the imagination, but it was a fight that was sort of punctuated with Fury boxing well, and then there was those two knockdowns, one particularly heavy in the 12th round. But I'll get to Wallin's comments and then a few thoughts and then on to a couple of other pieces of news floating around this fight and just bring it back to some of these comments. So Wallin says, talking to Sky Sports, Fury showed a good chin and a lot of heart in that fight. But maybe those shots have taken something out of him too. It would mean the world. I would beat the top guy in the division and it puts me in a fantastic spot to fight for a world title. To have this fight is a dream come true. Now it's time to show I belong here. He can do whatever he wants in terms of taking me seriously or not. I'll be focusing on what I need to do to be 100% ready for fight night, and I will be. That's Otto Wallin's statement. So good to hear that he's coming 100% ready, because it would be a shame if we saw a second consecutive knockover job. Because I think for most of us, it looked like Tom Schwarz pretty early on was displaying pretty bad body language and was looking for a way out. He got pretty much battered from pillar to post by Fury in that fight on June 15th. He didn't really come to fight in the way that obviously he'd been talking himself up. So hopefully Otto Wallin can at least go a few more rounds than Schwarz and actually put up a bit of resistance here. I don't think anyone is really expecting Wallin to come in here and upset Tyson Fury, but you'd hope he'd put up a better showing than Tom Schwarz. And I do think Wallin is a better fighter than Tom Schwarz, but he is, like Schwarz, still a relatively unproven, a fringe contender at best. But of those statements, a couple of things. So in terms of the lineal status, didn't really sort of put it on the same sort of level, did it? He said a win against Fury will put him in a fantastic spot to fight for a world title. So does that mean that the lineal status in his eyes is actually below the world titles? On the face of it, it might seem that way, but obviously if he wins that, just like Tyson Fury, he'll be talking himself up as the lineal heavyweight championship. But the main crux of those statements by Wallin that I wanted to just focus on is the bit about, have those shots taken something out of him too? Two knockdowns in that fight against Wilder in the 12th round, particularly heavy. It looked like Fury was knocked out. He somehow did an undertaker, got off the canvas, barely beat the count, and ultimately finished on his feet. Got a draw for his efforts, but many people thought just him getting up would be enough for him to win the fight. But, that's in the past now, so we're not going to relitigate that. But it was a very heavy shot. Has that fight taken anything from him? Maybe we won't see an indication of where he's really at until the rematch, because with Schwarz, even though ESPN analyst, company man Tim Bradley had been going on for months about Tom Schwarz having a big right hand just like Deontay Wilder and trying to draw those sorts of parallels, Tom Schwarz never got off many shots in anger, let alone landed anything significant on Fury. So we didn't see the chin checked. It was all one-way traffic in that first fight. And hopefully Otto Wallin does show up, because Tyson Fury's reputation doesn't really, he doesn't get anything from having another knockover opponent except for millions of dollars in the bank. And maybe that's actually part of what's happening here. I think it probably is a large part of what's happening here. Minimal risk and big time paydays. It's all win-win for Tyson Fury. But in terms of Wallin raising that question, it's an interesting question. Has something been taken from Fury? But is Wallin the guy to really sort of chin-check Fury for us to sort of see where he's at in terms of taking a shot flush? I'm not so sure. Part of the reason I think Otto Wallin has been chosen, besides the unbeaten record and the ranking in the WBA, is he's not a heavy-handed fighter. Out of all the sort of heavyweights you could sort of choose out there at the moment in terms of, if you had a scale of 1 to 100 in terms of power, Otto Wallin is actually sort of further down rather than being at the Wilder end of the scale. I don't want to say he's pillow-fisted, but in terms of Wallin being a power puncher, he's not noted for it. He's going to box to a decision if he's going to get a win here. He isn't knocking out Tyson Fury. So I don't think he's the guy that's really going to show us if Tyson Fury has had something taken out of him. And we may not know until the rematch against Deontay Wilder, because if Tyson Fury does in fact have a third fight in 2019, I think it will be against another sort of similar level of opponent, maybe not in terms of an unbeaten record, because I think in terms of the opponent front, they have to really take who they can get that's available, that's willing to fight for whatever money they're putting up. And I'll come to something in relation to that in a minute, but it's probably going to be someone who doesn't necessarily represent a huge amount of risk in terms of punching power. Because let's face it, they're not going to want to put Tyson Fury into massively risky fights to, basically stuff up a chance for a mega payday in a rematch with Deontay Wilder. So it's going to be safely until they get that done. So this is one of the reasons that Wallin is the opponent here as well. But in terms of other opponents, I mean, certainly Tyson Fury has been talking about a number of guys who were either offered the fight or weren't available for the fight. He did sort of mention Jarrell Miller and Dillian Whyte in an interview with Behind the Gloves, but it was kind of couched in a way that put it out there that they were sort of in line for the fight, or maybe would have been offered the fight, but they were unavailable for the fight. And I don't think if he's got this Deontay Wilder rematch next year, that he was ever going to be fighting a Jarrell Miller or a Dillian Whyte. I mean, there's a reason it's been Tom Schwartz and Otto Wallin. And part of that will be availability, but part of it is they're very beatable. They've got unbeaten records. ESPN can try sell them to the masses who won't necessarily know that these aren't top guys. Sure, this will be marketed in a way that this is two unbeaten fighters, Wallin versus Fury, but it's not going to capture the imagination. If they really wanted to capture the imagination, they'd get someone who was a big puncher. They'd get someone who was in the minds of fans, but also had a bit more of a reputation more broadly with casual fans. But actually, there's not too many of those sorts of fighters around. And if you are going to secure that sort of fighter, you're going to pay for it too. So as Fury sort of said in an interview just the other day, we got to Otto Wallin, who said, "I'll take the fight. It's really that simple." And when he's talked about these other guys that haven't taken the fight, like Trevor Bryan, Charles Martin, and that sort of thing, I'm sure that would have been down to money. They would have been asking for too much. But the Alexander Povetkin one, for me, is always a little bit unusual, because you would think at Povetkin, close to 40 years old, that having a fight against someone like a Tyson Fury is actually one of the biggest fights that he could actually get outside of Joshua and Wilder, and he's fought Anthony Joshua and lost. They're saying that they offered Povetkin the fight. I mean, maybe it was promotional ties, because he has been working through his outfit, World of Boxing, with Matchroom. Maybe that prevented the fight being made. So then he ends up taking on Hughie Fury, Tyson Fury's cousin, which to me is, and I've said it before, is a really odd coupling, because what does Povetkin really get from it? And I can't imagine there's going to be mega money there for him either. It just, seems a little bit strange. But maybe this is where promotional considerations in terms of the silos that are operating right now have really factored into eliminating a whole bunch of guys. And I've talked about this in some depth before, but Tyson Fury sort of saying Povetkin turned down the fight. Yeah, it sort of seems to me that for both sides that would have worked quite well. And in terms of a name and a guy that could get, has some recognition beyond just hardcore boxing fans, Povetkin would have been one of the better, potential names available. But it wasn't made, and it's not the fight we've got. We've got Otto Wallin, who's a big southpaw, 6'5", unbeaten, but clearly overmatched. Anyway, we'll leave it there. Otto Wallin raising the question, has Deontay Wilder's fight with Fury taken something from Fury? Heavy knockdowns. Maybe we won't know until the rematch. Anyway, drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.